On the last edition of the Wrestling Degenerates, we discussed Jack Gallagher, a British wrestler in WWE who lost it all after a dark secret resurfaced. We talked about Ted DiBiase Jr., the son of a wrestling legend whose real life fit his wrestling character very well. And we discussed Bill DeMott, the first ever WWE Performance Center head trainer who was surrounded by allegations of bullying and misconduct. Today, I give you the AEW Degenerates. We're going to be talking about wrestlers who found themselves embroiled in controversy whilst they were in AEW. Once again, this video is not an attack on the company, so no meatrider tears in the comments please. And no, I will not be discussing CM Punk in this video. Like and subscribe, and let's begin. In 2016, Brian Kendrick returned to the WWE when he competed in their Cruiserweight Classic. Before this, he had already had 2 stints with the WWE, as well as runs in Ring of Honor and TNA. Though he didn't win the tournament, he would win the Cruiserweight title that same year, and it seemed as though Brian Kendrick had caught a third wind in the WWE. However, this Cruiserweight title run was short-lived and didn't last long, and from here, he just became another lower card Cruiserweight guy. He would do this for a few years, but by 2020, his wrestling career had slowed down, and he had become a backstage producer and trainer in the WWE. It seemed as though his wrestling career was pretty much done. Until in 2022, when Brian Kendrick started getting involved in NXT and got into a feud with Haaland. No, not Erling, I'm talking about Parker Boudreaux. Brian Kendrick's in-ring return was announced, and he was set to be facing Haaland on January 25th, 2022. However, the match never took place, as it was reported that Brian Kendrick had asked for his release from the company, and 6 days later, the release was granted on February 1st, and now nobody knew what Kendrick was going to do next. Until a few hours later, when on the very same day he was released, he was announced to be facing Jon Moxley on AEW Dynamite on February 2nd, the very next day. It was a crazy turn of events, and everything happened very fast, and what would happen next would happen even faster. On February 2nd, the date he was set to appear on AEW Dynamite, old statements from Brian Kendrick resurfaced, video and text interviews where he states his belief in numerous conspiracy theories began to spread over social media, with him stating his belief in the Holocaust death numbers being faked and exaggerated, the Sandy Hook shooting being faked, 9/11 being faked, and the killing of Osama bin Laden never happening. As a result of this, his AEW Dynamite appearance was cancelled, with Tony Khan stating on Twitter, "We've been made aware of abhorrent and offensive comments made in the past by Brian Kendrick. There's no room in AEW for the views expressed by Brian. We think it's best for all that Brian be pulled from tonight's card as we gather more info. We'll announce a replacement bout ASAP." Brian Kendrick would later post his own statement on Twitter saying the following: "I spread the most vile comments without thinking of the damage it would cause. I will live with this regret for the rest of my life. I am truly sorry for the pain I have caused," as well as, "I apologize for all the hurt and embarrassment I have caused with my words. These are not beliefs and were never beliefs of mine, and I crossed the line." All of this happened in the space of 24 hours. Brian Kendrick has not been involved in wrestling since, other than this past Survivor Series where he produced Ronda Rousey vs Shotzi, as he was specifically requested by Ronda. In 2016, Jake Atlas made his wrestling debut, and for the next couple of years he would make his mark on the independent scene, wrestling for the likes of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Beyond Wrestling, Warrior Wrestling, PWG, GCW, and Ring of Honor. On October 23rd, 2019, Jake Atlas would sign with the WWE for the NXT brand. It was his big break. However, I think it's fair to say that his WWE run was very uneventful. Jake mainly wrestled in the Cruiserweight division and on 205 Live, with his biggest match being against Santos Escobar for the Cruiserweight title, which he lost. And on August 6th, 2021, after just under 2 years in the WWE, Jake Atlas was released from his contract as part of a round of budget cut releases. Following his WWE release, he'd wrestle for GCW and Ring of Honor in September 2021, but shortly after, he announced his retirement from wrestling. But nobody retires in wrestling, and 3 months later, Jake Atlas was back. He appeared on AEW Dark in December, coming out of retirement and defeating Serpentico, and then on the January 7th edition of AEW Rampage, Jake Atlas would face Adam Cole in a match. He would lose the match, but he was announced as being all elite after the show. Jake Atlas was back, and in a big way. Unfortunately for him though, he got injured in this match, suffering a knee injury that would leave him out for most of a year. And even more unfortunately was that only a few months into his injury, controversy would call. As on May 3rd, 2022, Jake Atlas was arrested after his boyfriend called the police on him. Atlas had reportedly scratched his boyfriend and tore his tank top during an argument over a sexual encounter. Jake Atlas was charged with misdemeanor domestic battery, and Jake Atlas, in a tweet that no longer exists, apologized for his actions and said that he was under the influence when it happened, and says though that does not excuse his behavior, he has been attending an alcohol abuse treatment program for the past 7 years, and he intends to continue. The charges were later dropped, but a video of the arrest was released showing the footage from the police's POV, showing Jake Atlas pull the I'm famous card, call his boyfriend a nobody, a bitch ass, and said that he was bad at sex. It's an uncomfortable video. Jake Atlas' contract finished with AEW, who had no intention to re-sign him, in October 2022, and he has not been involved in wrestling since. Jimmy Havoc made his wrestling debut in 2004. He had trained at NW UK Hammerlock alongside other trainees like Zack Sabre Jr. and Fergal Devitt. You might have heard of them. Jimmy Havoc very quickly established himself as a deathmatch wrestler, and he quickly became one of the top deathmatch wrestlers in Europe, wrestling for promotions such as IPW UK, WXW, and he also competed in CZW's European Tournaments of Death in 2010 and 2012, and as well in 2012, he would debut for ICW and Progress Wrestling in the UK, two of the biggest promotions in the UK, and would spend the next few years as one of the top wrestlers in British wrestling, eventually appearing for the likes of Defiant Wrestling and making his way to America to appear for Impact Wrestling. Jimmy Havoc's career just kept on going up. In 2017, he started making appearances for the revived MLW, making appearances for them until 2019, and 2019 was perhaps the biggest year of his career as he was announced as one of the first AEW signings, and he would be debuting at AEW's debut show Double or Nothing 2019, and he appeared in the Casino Battle Royal, making it to the Final Four. And at that year's All Out pay-per-view, he scored a big win over Darby Allin and Joey Janela in the Cracker Barrel Brawl match. Following this though, Jimmy Havoc would mainly work on Dark and only occasionally work on Dynamite. He was also getting into fights at restaurants against Excalibur and losing. On the 15th of April 2020, Jimmy Havoc and Kip Sabian would start teaming up and calling themselves the Superbad Squad. They had their biggest match when they challenged Omega and Page for the tag titles on the June 3rd Dynamite in a losing effort. And it was also that same month when Jimmy Havoc's career would change forever and also end. Jimmy Havoc was accused of rape, abusive behavior, and assault in June 2020 Speaking Out movement. Following this, AEW announced on social media that they would be sending Jimmy Havoc to attend counseling and rehabilitation, stating the following: "We wish Jimmy Havoc all the best as he receives treatment and counseling in an effort to overcome the mental health and substance abuse challenges in his life. We are aware of various reports related to Jimmy. We are evaluating his status with our company and will address it when he has successfully completed his rehabilitation." Jimmy Havoc was released from AEW in August of that year. He has not been involved in wrestling since, has never responded to any of the allegations, and if this image is anything to go by, he looks completely different. That is it for the AEW Degenerates. Be sure to like and subscribe and comment down below what video you want to see next. And I'm also going to quickly address, because I know I'm going to get so many comments about it, I know there are people that I left out on this. I know, okay? But that's it from me. I'll see you all soon. Goodbye, and keep on rolling.